I can't die again.
We didn't make it, did we?
No.
And we have to try again.
Up the old road, there's a place. Abandoned for years, stuck in time. Somewhat unusual. When night falls, fear takes shape in the dark.
What's happening?
Death starts the night over, where new horrors await.
I'm just gonna grab it. Okay. Don't move.
Yeah. What? Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone.
What?
It's still in my face!
Your nights here are limited. Die enough times in this place, your time will run out. The only escape, survive until dawn. But I'm sure those are just stories.
Totally.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, horror gamers. And I actually count myself among your numbers, as the horror genre is one of my favorites when it comes to video games, survival horror, things like that. Resident Evil is my favorite video game franchise of all time, so makes sense that we're looking at the movie that we're looking at this week. So, how the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing all right.
I am doing well. I actually saw a lot of movies this week. As far as like going to the theater, one of the rare weekends I was able to get away multiple times. But with that said, other than that, it's a normal Monday for me. Also with us, it's Dawn and Ellie. What's up, Dawn?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. Well, if Venom's intro didn't give it away, we are talking about Until Dawn, which just opened up. And for anyone not familiar with the game, I'll go with the synopsis. Not that I wouldn't always. It's pretty normal for me to read the synopsis off IMDb, but since the movie does differ a little bit, or more than a little, well, we'll get into that. But here's a synopsis from IMDb. A group of friends trapped in a time loop where mysterious foes chase and kill them in gruesome ways must survive until dawn to escape it. All right. We will start with our general thoughts. Venom, did you survive until dawn and escape the movie?
No, I fell asleep at about the 25-minute mark. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I am a fan of the game. I didn't finish either of the Until Dawn games, but I definitely put in about 5-6 hours into each one, so I am fairly familiar with the gameplay and the storyline and things like that. It was nice to see some similarities between the movie and the game, things like Dr. Hill, right down to the voice actor, which I was kind of surprised about, because for anybody who's played the Until Dawn games, there's actually some really good voice acting in there. I'm actually surprised they didn't get more of the voice actors from the game to actually star in the movie, because if they did, I might have actually liked some of the characters in this movie, as opposed to what we ended up getting, where I just didn't give a rat's ass about anybody in this movie. I was going to say that this movie feels like two different movies, because for the first half, maybe more than the first half, like let's say the first two acts, I was on board. I was thoroughly loving the concept. As you guys know, I say it constantly, I don't watch trailers, so I had no idea that this was a time loop movie. The trailer obviously gives it away within the first few seconds of the trailer, but the fact that I didn't know that this was a time loop movie actually made this kind of an interesting experience for me, which I'll talk about a little bit during the walkthrough. But overall, for the first half or so, maybe up to the first hour, I was totally on board. I was on board with the concept. I was on board with the kills. We actually get some pretty creative kills here. Stuff like, curb stomps, head crushed by a sledgehammer, spontaneous combustion. I mean, there's some pretty interesting kills in this movie. So I'll give it that. I mean, there's nothing really spectacular as far as acting goes. The best actor in here is probably Peter Stormare as Dr. Hill, who, of course, also portrayed, did the voice for the character in the game. So, those of us who played the game, it was nice to hear a familiar voice. But ultimately, once we get to a part I call the sizzle reel, there's a part in this movie where our protagonists don't realize how long they've been trapped here, and one of them checks their phone and actually sees that they've been recording videos on every time loop, every reset. And watching some of those were really cool, watching all the different ways that these guys died and that they had forgotten about. But from that point on, the movie is an absolute slog. It's dull, it's pretentious, it over-explains itself, which is just, for a genre film to over-explain itself, it just feels like hand-holding. And as an older horror fan, I don't appreciate that. Maybe the 20-year-old horror fans might dig it, but yeah, for me, it was just a little insipid to just over-explain everything. The culmination of the movie is kind of dull. The way that they defeat the big bad is just plain stupid, especially because the big bad, Dr. Hill, is way more aware of the rules of this world than our protagonist, yet he succumbs to something so stupid that it just bugged the shit out of me. I will say I enjoyed the Wendigos. I thought the Wendigos were cool. The Masked Killer. These are all similarities to the game. We have the Wendigos in the game. We have the Masked Killer. We have references to the coal mine in both the game and the movie. So there are similarities, but obviously the major difference is the time loop. There is no time loop element in the Until Dawn game, but what there is in the Until Dawn game is replay value, because different choices, there's quick time events all through the games, and depending on whether you pass those quick time events, could change the story. Certain characters might die, so it's kind of cool to play it and then replay it to try to get some of those other endings. Like I said, I never physically finished the game myself, but I did watch all the different endings on YouTube, so I am aware of, all the different endings that are available. But yeah, this movie, like I said, in the third act, it just turns into just a dull jump scare factory and the game had a lot of jump scares in it too, so it makes sense. You should be expecting it. But yeah, just I didn't like the lack of context on the Masked Killer. It's like there's a Masked Killer and that's it. That's all we get. No backstory, no explanation. Obviously, you can kind of put two and two together in your head, especially based on some of the things that they say in the movie about, either you escape or you become a part of it. And, so potentially the Masked Killer is just a previous patient who is now just become part of the time loop, blah, blah, blah. So, we get some creative kills, but ultimately that's going to be the best part of this movie. The story setup is fun. The house is cool. The location is cool. The town is cool, especially when they go over multiple time loops and the area keeps changing until we finally get that final form where it's like a big cemetery with broken down buildings and everything else. Like that's kind of cool. Set design is pretty good. But yeah, overall, once you get to the third act, it's just kind of dull, kind of generic, been there, done that. Like I said, I don't care about any characters here. We get very little character development in this one, unfortunately. Like the movie basically starts and these kids are already on their way to their location. We get backstory on one of the characters, our main character, who's, searching for her missing sister, but the rest of the characters are just kind of fodder. They're just there to be killed. And admittedly, like I said, some of the kills are pretty fun. I laughed out loud for a few of them. But, one thing I will give the movie is that it doesn't outstay its welcome. in the sense that it stopped with the time loops at the exact right time. Like it didn't make it didn't make us just constantly over and over watching these people die. After like 3 or 4 days of doing it, then we get that sizzle reel that just kind of, like I said, shows all the different ways they died on the days that they forgot about. And that was kind of cool. But like I said, from there on, the movie is just dull, kind of color by numbers, supernatural thriller with a human antagonist who ends up just being kind of lame and stupid. So yeah, overall, this isn't a movie I can't recommend to anyone, whether you're a fan of the game or you've never played the game before, but you're just a cinematic horror fan. I can't really recommend this to too many people. It looks nice. Obviously, it's a big budget horror movie playing in theaters, so it looks nice, but aside from that, there's just not really too much to write home about with this one. The concept is cool. I like some of the changes that they made from the game to the movie, but just overall, this movie pales in comparison to the game. It doesn't have the tension or atmosphere that the game has. And the game itself isn't even all that great. Like what's funny is that the movie kind of mirrors the game, because I always thought the same thing with the game, that like that which is probably why I stopped playing it at around the 6-7 hour mark, is that towards the end it just got kind of monotonous and I just really wasn't all that into it. So for whatever it's worth, the movie is a fairly faithful adaptation of the game, because I found the game to be boring at the end too. So yeah, so like I said, I can't really recommend this one. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen by any stretch. It's not a terrible movie. It's just nothing special, nothing we haven't seen before, at least in the third act, as I said. And just all the plot points that kind of are left dangling, we don't really get. And then the ending that kind of tries to set up a sequel, which I abhor stuff like that. It's like, you don't have to have that final sting to, make it seem like you're trying to have a sequel, or like, the situation hasn't been solved or whatever, because then it makes us feel like we just wasted 2 hours of our lives. If it's like, if these kids got out of their situation, but the experiments are going to continue, so what the hell did I just spend 2 hours for? It didn't make a difference. So yeah, this one's not going to get much of a recommend from me. Like I said, if I had to rate it, it would be somewhere middle of the road. It's not a terrible movie. It's just not anything praiseworthy. So I'll leave it at that for now for my general thoughts.
Okay. How about you, Don?
I'm pretty much right there with Venom. I do echo a lot of what he said. The general setup seems really cool. I kind of like, like the creature feature slasher, take on like a Happy Death Day, Groundhog Day kind of a thing. The time loops, I like the way that they're brought about, the way that they're introduced in the first act, the way that that the characters kind of slowly discover that that's the cause, and, it leads into, how they're going to get out of it. The designs look great. I really like some of the look of the creatures, the way that they kind of interact, how each one's kind of like distinct and memorable enough that you can kind of, pick and tell who each one is kind of easily. I'm not, sold as high on the deaths, but, it's better than what we usually get with this kind of Blumhouse kind of a thing, because that was my initial thought, was that, it kind of just looks and feels very much like it's a Blumhouse kind of a movie. Like Pretty Pop Stars. I actually thought this was PG-13. So yeah, when we do get some of the kills in here, the first, like, I forget which one's first, but I think by the time like the one guy gets, like curb stomped, like Venom said, you finally start realizing, oh crap, this is a nice, R-rated film, and they don't really skimp out, although it does feel kind of, paint by numbers kind of a thing with, some of how the deaths are played out. But yeah, I completely agree. I think that so-called sizzle reel, or, like flashback, or whatever it is, yeah, that just takes all the energy and momentum out of the movie. I can't say it's unnecessary because I think it kind of leads into how they resolve itself and how it resolves matters. And, it does play an important role, but it's just like the point of the film where the energy stops, the momentum stops, and it just drags, and it makes like the final half of the film feel far longer than it really needs to be. Um, yeah, the finale is just so uninteresting and so bland and so boring. It's not as big of an issue, but I do agree. I do think that it is kind of the point where the film just stops and it just kind of, meanders along. I can't say that I do find the means of dispatching the creatures as interesting as it could have been. I mean, I don't want to get into spoilers here, but I do think that there could have been a different way that they went about it. I, it does have a few interesting ways that it could have gone, and I wish that they would have taken one of those instead. But yeah, just for the sake of not spoiling anything, I really can't say much else about that. The whole idea of this setting up a sequel, I can't say it'll be interesting unless it becomes another one of those remake the original film with a different cast kind of sequels. But even if they explain more of the lore, more of how everything gets started, more of how this all plays out, I really can't see this being all that interesting because, again, it's just going to be another one of these, people slowly discover they're stuck in a time loop and they're forced to, solve what's going on to, stop everything from happening while these creatures attack them. I can see that just becoming really bland and repetitive and boring just, really quickly. So I'm not really sure that that's it's intended to be what it wants it to be. So, yeah, to me, it just really kind of feels like a film of two halves where the first, 45 minutes to an hour of this, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but I mean, it's interesting enough. And, it's definitely like the most interesting part of the film. And then, yeah, once we get, like the revelations about how all of the flashbacks happen, how all the deaths have occurred, how all the different, how everything is working, it just really loses its interest and it just kind of meanders along and it just becomes every other paint by numbers, modern jump scare factory kind of genre effort. I can't say it's as bad as something like Night Swim or Imaginary was, because I think those are kind of even more blatantly obvious kind of examples. But it still very much feels like that kind of it very much feels like that would be like the mentality that this kind of works along, where yeah, just because you throw 20 different jump scares into the film in the like 20 minutes, it doesn't make the film that tense or scary or thrilling. So yeah, I'm kind of right there with Venom is on this one. Definitely go into the first half, go into this expecting the first half to be far more interesting, far more enjoyable. The second act of this one just definitely loses steam and runs out of ideas really quickly. I would say that I did find a couple of them kind of, it did get me just because it was one of those where, you're expecting you're expecting one and then it happens and then another jump scare occurs like 10 seconds later and that one gets you because you're expecting the first one. But even at that stage, it's kind of too little too late to, really kind of muster up the interest or care. So, kind of paint by numbers. Overall, definitely a film of two halves. But yeah, not necessarily something that's, really crying out or begging to be seen, especially with Sinners still in theaters. So, yeah, definitely go for that one if you haven't seen it yet, and wait for streaming, because this one I think is going to be on streaming long before Sinners is. So I think you're going to be better off saving your money for this to appear there and go see Sinners instead. So yeah, can't really think of much else. Just for the sake of not spoiling anything. So I guess back to you, Mike.
All right. I'll keep it pretty short since I would just be repeating what's mostly already been said. I thought the movie was okay, not great. Kind of like Venom put it, resembling the video game. Now, to be fair, on my first playthrough of Until Dawn, I did enjoy it quite a bit. The problem was it didn't feel like a rich enough experience to like go through it with multiple characters for me. Like it there wasn't enough that differentiated each playthrough. Like, yeah, you got some different perspectives and some like different things happening based on like where each character was during certain events, but it wasn't like some huge like in-depth story that interested me enough to like play through with like multiple characters. I think I made it 2 or 3 playthroughs, and then I was like, all right, I'm tapped out on this overall story. And the movie's kind of the same. It definitely feels like it borrows some elements of other horror movies versus the actual game, just because it's hard to kind of transfer that style of game like 1-to-1 into a movie. You can't just spend like, what was it, 90 minutes maybe going through like the same perspective with everyone. I mean, it'd be tougher to pull off. I know some movies have done like the multiple perspective thing, but really Until Dawn isn't like a deep enough story. Now, the things I did like about the movie, they did try to carry over some lore about like what was going on. I did like some of the kills. There was like a stomping kill that was especially good. I want to say I like the score. I like the look of it. I thought, it looked pretty good. As far as like just the quality of the cinematography and all that. But I also agree. Like once the movie got to about maybe the halfway point, it just became kind of a slog after that, and it less interesting. And if you're going to make a movie where like half of it's really good, I'd rather it be the second half, because like I can take like a slower introduction with not a lot happening if you end it the right way versus the other way around where like you set the table really nice and it just doesn't do much after that. So unfortunately that was how it ended up for me. And I'll say like I saw 3 other 2025 movies this weekend, and I liked all of them better than this. And that included like every type of movie, like regular budget, low budget, and all, and like 3 different genres, and I liked them all better than this. And I can't say I dislike this movie, because I think there is like an audience for this, especially if no one played the game. Maybe they'll go into this where like 100% of the lore and the gimmick is like new and they don't really see the differences. Maybe they'll like it more, because I have seen like some people way more positive on it than any of us. But it also could just depend like what type of horror movies they like, or what they got out or that I didn't. But to me, it's just kind of like the middle of the road. Like it'll be forgotten about. So yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say without repeating everything that's already said. It's just it was an okay movie. Could have been better. I was hoping for a little bit more. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So back to you, Venom.
Yeah, I was definitely disappointed with this one, knowing that David Sandberg directed it going into it, and me being a big fan of Lights Out and Annabelle Creation. Annabelle Creation potentially is my favorite movie in the Conjuring universe. I absolutely adore that film. And Lights Out isn't a classic by any stretch, but it has a couple of moments, a couple of jump scares that work for me. I prefer the short, but the short is like 3 minutes long, so the movie is obviously a little bit more fleshed out. But yeah, like I said, just knowing that this was David Sandberg and written by Blair Butler, who is I'm a fan of Blair from her time at G4. She obviously had a part in writing the story for the game, and they brought her back to help write the screenplay for the movie as well. So it's too bad, because if you have the same writer, or one of the same writers, it's not all the same writers, but one of the same writers from the game to the movie, you would think that it would be a little bit closer to the game, but no, it's not. And like I mentioned earlier, I do like the time loop thing. I don't usually like time loop movies. Like, people were praising The Endless a few years ago, and it just really didn't do that much for me. But this one, for whatever it's worth, because it's a video game, because it's a movie based on a video game, I'm okay with the time loops. I like that. In fact, there are video games out there that are timed games where you have to finish the game in a certain time, and if you don't, you have to start the whole thing over from scratch. So that part of it I was on board for, but there's not really a whole lot of other things that this movie does well. I did like the design of the Wendigos, especially the Melanie Wendigo, which, I'll explain what I mean by the Melanie Wendigo when we get to the walkthrough. And the Mask Killer, of course, I did like the Mask Killer. He looked a lot better here than they do in the game. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that this movie does better than the game. There is one scene that they actually, my favorite part of the game. I don't know if Mike is going to know what part I'm talking about, but the part where the Wendigos are like right in front of you and you have to hold your controller still. You remember that part, Mike? They kind of redo that in this movie. Yeah, that's my favorite part of the game. It's like the most tense, like literally. And if you play it on VR, you can't move your head. Like if you move your head or you breathe too loud into the microphone, the Wendigo sees you. But literally, the Wendigo is like right there on top of you. Like they make it a bigger point to say that the Wendigos are blind in the game as opposed to the movie. It seems like they're still blind in the movie as well, but they don't make as big a point of mentioning it. So, but I did like that they kind of reproduced that towards the end of the movie, where there's that scene in the coal mines where the main Wendigo, the first one that we see, is like right there on top of one of our protagonists. I thought that was cool.
I was gonna say that's based on the video game, because I was gonna bring that up. I didn't know if that was a spoiler or not, but yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes as well. That's from the game.
Yes, that's directly from the game. Yes, like in the game, because there's a motion detector in the PlayStation 4 controller. So like when you get to that part in the game, you have to hold the controller still. If you move the controller in any way, your character makes a noise in the game alerting the Wendigo, and then it just kills you. And I kind of like that. Like, I remember it freaked out my wife the first time she played it. She didn't realize what she needed to do, and she put the controller down thinking it was a cutscene. And yeah, the Wendigo killed her. It was kind of funny. But yeah, that was definitely from the game. Like I said, not a whole lot that they carry over from the game into the movie, but the couple of things that they do, I do like. And Dr. Hill, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on Dr. Hill. I like Dr. Hill more in the game because you actually talk to him in between each chapter, and he actually like asks you questions, and based on your answers, it changes gameplay. Like at one point, he asks you what you're more scared of, gore or like knives or something along those lines, and whatever you pick is going to be in your scenario the next time you play it. So I do like the use of Dr. Hill more in the game than I do in the movie, but I still liked him in the movie. I hated his end. Like I said,
I think the actor portrays it really well. It's just like you said, in the game, he seems to serve more of an actual purpose.
Exactly. Yes. Like here, he's just kind of a harbinger. Like, well, I mean, and we actually do get a real harbinger in this movie, that homeless guy that gets his ass kicked by those two, metalhead kids. So there actually is a true harbinger, but, you get the guy at the gas station too, the classic, guy at the country gas station warning people, oh, don't go over there. But then, of course, we find out who that guy is later in the film, and it all makes sense. So, yeah. Like I said, just so many missed opportunities, so many things that could have been done a little bit better, not relying on jump scares, going more for tension and atmosphere. Like I said, that one scene with the Wendigos, if more of the movie was as tense as that scene, I think all three of us would be saying some different things about the movie. But unfortunately, I mean, I wasn't scared at all at any point in the movie. Granted, I'm an old ass horror fan, so not much necessarily scares me, but yeah, this movie just didn't do anything for me. And like Don said, it just feels like a Blumhouse jump scare factory, so it doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot for me. So I guess this will be your final spoiler warning, folks. If you are somehow interested in seeing Until Dawn and you haven't yet, go ahead and pause the podcast. Come back after you've seen it. If you've already seen it or don't have any interest in watching it, go ahead and stick around and find out our more detailed thoughts on the film. So let's get into it. Our film opens up with a cold open where we see just a single woman trying to escape from a shadowed creature. The creature's in the shadows, so we can't actually see him yet. She does end up escaping from that creature by digging through the ground. She ends up coming out from the ground, but then our mass killer shows up and she says something very odd. Rather than just kind of begging for her life, like, please don't kill me, she says, please, no, I can't do it again. Please don't make me do it again. I can't. And then, of course, the mass killer kills her. So that's our first kill, and it's off screen. So, like I said, before I realized that this was a time loop movie, when the first couple of kills are off screen, I actually started to get mad. Because it's like there's only 5 protagonists, and yet the first 3 kills are off screen. What the fuck? So, but of course, more will be revealed. So, after our cold open, we're introduced to our main 5 folks. First, it is Clover. She is basically looking for her missing sister. As it turns out, the girl in the cold open is her sister Melanie. So Clover, which is an odd name, but I don't know if it was a nickname or if that was her real name, but whatever. Her name's Clover. We've got Max. Max is basically her ex-boyfriend. He seems to be like the nice guy of the group. He actually does still care for Clover and, came along on this trip to help her look for her sister because he still has feelings for her and is hoping to rekindle what they had before. Then we meet Nina. Nina is, I don't know. Nina's kind of doesn't have much. She's kind of like the bitch of the group, but in a good way. She's like bitchy. She's got a snarky attitude. Let's go with that. Like, I actually kind of liked her at times, but at other times she kind of annoyed me. Our next character is named Megan. Megan is an Asian girl who is also an empath, where or a psychic empath, whatever you want to go with. She has some kind of psychic abilities where she can sense things, in the world around her, in the house. Like, as soon as they get into the house, she talks about something's not right here. I sense something wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then our final character of our main 5 is Abe. Abe is Megan's girlfriend, and Abe is basically our douchebag character. Clover, Max, Nina, and Megan are longtime friends. They've been friends for years. Abe is kind of the new guy in the group and, very much shows it. Like I said, the way he treats the other people in the group, even the way he treats his own girlfriend at times, it just seems kind of shitty. So that's our core 5. When we're first introduced to them, we see them going to a location, and they're going to this location based on a video that Clover received from her sister Melanie. Basically, it's the last message that she ever received from Melanie before Melanie disappeared. And somehow, based just on this video showing a convenience store gas station in the background, these kids are able to find out where this place is. Like, they don't tell us anything in the movie about, whether Melanie actually said where she was, because she was actually on her way to California. She wasn't even going to this area, which is known as Glore Valley. So our kids, our main 5, they find the gas station that's in Melanie's video. They go in, or should I say Clover goes in to buy a cup of coffee. She asks the clerk, she shows the clerk a picture of her sister and asks the clerk, have you seen her? And the clerk instantly is like, oh, she's missing, huh? And, Clover's like, I didn't say that. Why would you assume she's missing? And he's like, well, because you're not the first person to come here looking for a missing family member. It happens constantly. People are always disappearing. And this is where we get the first mention of Glore Valley, where the guy basically says, yeah, anybody who goes up to Glore Valley pretty much just disappears. We never see him again. And then their family members come looking for him later. So, Clover finds out where Glore Valley is, and she has the friends go there. When they end up on the way there, they're having a torrential downpour, like major, major rain to the point where they can't even see 5 feet in front of their car. Obviously, this being a horror movie, I'm expecting them to hit a tree or to hit something in the road. They're basically arguing in the car back and forth. Clover wants them to turn around, but it's like they've already turned around once or twice, even though we don't see that in the film. But Abe, who is the driver, basically says, "No, we've already turned around a couple of times. I'm not going to turn around again." Everybody in the car is yelling at each other. Finally, they come out of the rain and get to a mansion in the middle of nowhere. But the funny thing is that it's raining all outside of the perimeter of the house. So the house and the yard itself are dry. It's not raining, but it's raining you can actually see the rain wall right where, on the edge of the property. And obviously everybody's freaking out. Megan, of course, like I said, being our psychic, instantly is like, there's something wrong with this place. I think we should go. But Abe, being the driver, was like, nah, I'm not going back through that rain. Fuck that. Let's wait out the rain and let's just chill out here. They end up going into the house. We end up seeing, the famous, hourglass that we see in the trailer. They notice the hourglass, but the hourglass doesn't do anything, so they don't really make too much mention of it. While they're there, while they're just kind of exploring, they find, it turns out that the building that they found is a kind of like a hotel type, or an inn, if you will. And there's a guest book where people sign in. Clover looks in the guest book, finds her sister's name, but her sister signed it 13 times, and every time she signed it, her handwriting got worse and worse, so that by the time you get to the end, the 13th signature, you can't even read it. It doesn't even look like words. So obviously there's something weird going on. Eventually, Abe and Megan go upstairs to make out, maybe get a little hot and heavy. Eventually, our mass killer does reappear. He ends up killing Abe and Megan off screen, which, like I said, at this point, I'm pissed off because it's like, wait a minute, there's only 5 people here and 2 of the deaths are going to be off screen. Fuck that. But obviously, I didn't see the trailer, so I'm not aware of what's coming. Eventually, the rest of the 3 all get killed, and Clover is the last one to be killed. When Clover dies, all 5 of our protagonists wake back up, and the hourglass has reset. So basically, what's happening here is that they're stuck in a time loop. They need to survive until dawn, and if they do, whoever is left alive, if at least one person survives until dawn, whoever is alive gets to leave. Anybody who was killed will remain dead because it's not going to reset anymore because there was a survivor. So obviously the intention is to make sure everybody survives, that all 5 people survive. When they wake up or when they come to, they realize, wait a minute, didn't I just get killed? All of them are like, I thought I just got killed. What's going on? Then, right before they all got killed, Abe found a wall in the office that had a bunch of missing posters. Now, the missing posters have no information on them. It's literally just a picture and the word missing. And obviously, with a standard missing poster, there's, height information, weight information, like the last clothes that they were seen in, hair color, eye color, stuff like that. But these just say missing. After they're all killed and they come back for their second run through, all of their pictures are now on that wall. So all 5 of them now have missing posters up on that wall. So they are, if you accept it as such, they are now officially missing because they're stuck in this time loop. It does take them, I think it's not until the 3rd time loop that they actually start to realize what's happening, that at least one of them needs to survive to break this time loop. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go over every single death and every single time loop because that's just going to take too long. On top of the fact, I only saw this movie once and I probably don't remember everything anyway. So Eventually, I think on the third or fourth run through, they decide, all right, fuck it. We're not going to run. We're not going to do nothing. They literally barricade all the doors in the house, and then they all lock themselves in the bathroom. So all 5 of them are in the bathroom, and they're all just like, if we just stay here and survive until the sunrise, we should be able to get out of here, no problem. Eventually, Abe decides that he's thirsty. He grabs a glass. There happens to be a glass in the bathroom, and he takes a sip of water from the tap. So he pours himself a glass of water, takes a sip. Then everybody else in the room says, "Hey, we're thirsty too. Can we get some water?" So then after Abe is done drinking his share, he fills the glass up and then hands it to the next person in line, and everybody passes the glass of water to each other. So all 5 of them take sips of the water. Eventually, Abe starts coughing. He starts convulsing. He starts coughing up blood. Like whenever he coughs, bits of blood are coming out. And I think everybody starts to realize, oh shit, what was wrong with the water? We all drank the water. Just as they're making that realization, Abe fucking explodes. And I'm not exaggerating, folks. This is literally spontaneous combustion. He just fucking explodes to a pile of flesh and blood. It's great. And then eventually, in the same order that everyone drank the water, everyone starts exploding. At one point, Megan actually dropped a little bit of water on her leg before she took her sip. So we actually see her leg explode first. Her leg comes off. She starts crawling away. Then suddenly her belly expands like she's pregnant, like she's having a spontaneous birth. And then she explodes. And finally, once all 5 of them explode and they're respawned, they realize, okay, we can't drink the water. We can't even touch the water in this world. And then at that point, they realize, one of them, I think Abe, asks, at some point in one of the walkthroughs or one of the run-throughs, excuse me, they figure out that this guy, Dr. Hill, who works at the local sanitarium, well, not that the sanitarium's there anymore. I totally forgot to mention about this town. The town that they're in, Glore Valley, used to be a thriving town, but there was a coal mine underneath the town. Apparently, they overmined the area, and the entire town sank into the ground. Like literally all the buildings just sank into the ground. Sometimes there might be like a spire or a part of the roof sticking out above the ground, so you could tell that there once was a house there. And the hotel, the building that our protagonists are in, was the one structure that didn't fall through the ground. So it's the only building that survived the destruction of Glore Valley. At one point during one of the run-throughs, Clover ends up, if you guys remember earlier, I was talking about every time that they respawn, the area changes. The first time that they respawn, there's a house across the street, like a disheveled shack appears across the street, and written in spray paint on the front door is "Fuck the Glore Valley Witch." And Clover is like, well, that house wasn't there before, so maybe there's an answer in there for us. So she decides, the rest of the group doesn't want to go. The rest of the group is like, no. Let's just stay right here and try to survive the night. Unfortunately, after one of the interactions with Dr. Hill, he basically tells them, you can't survive this by standing still. The only way you're going to survive is to fight and, try to survive, blah, blah, blah. So, when Clover goes across the street to that disheveled house, she ends up running into an old lady that looks very, very old and decrepit. She's got a gas, like an oxygen mask on. Eventually, she stands up, and this is where we get that little piece of information of there's no way. The only way out of this is to either survive the night or become part of it. That's all they tell us. They don't really go beyond that. That's why I'm assuming that the mass killer is probably someone who was a part of the experiment earlier and just decided, yeah, fuck it, I'm just going to stay and kill people. You know what I mean? Like I said, that's my interpretation. We get no explanation of the mass killer in the movies. So, whatever you can come up with is probably going to be better than what I did. So, Anyway, let's see. Eventually, like I said, they figure out that they've actually gone through more days than they thought. At one point, they think they've only gone through 4 or 5, like respawns, if you will. But then they check the log, the guest log, and which they've been signing. Well, one of them, I think Megan. Yeah, Megan has been signing it every time they get respawned. And they realize that their names are in the book 13 times, but they're like, well, wait a minute, we've only respawned like 4 or 5 times. Then that's when Abe pulls out his phone and says, wait a minute, didn't I record something when we first got here? Maybe there's an answer in there. He ends up opening his phone, and suddenly there's like a dozen videos that he doesn't recognize. He's like, what are all these videos on my phone? That's when they realize that they're actually forgetting some of their respawns. Like, they think that they have a memory of the last death every time it happens, but apparently no, they're actually forgetting, or it's being held back from them, whatever the case may be. So this is the sizzle reel, if you will. That's what I'm calling it. And basically they watch all these different videos. In one of them, Clover has like a worm coming out of her cheek, and we see one of the other members of the group trying to get it out of her face. Like, it pokes its head out periodically, and they try to grab it, but they can't grab it. And then eventually Clover turns her head, and when she turns back, suddenly she's got this big nasty scar on her cheek where the worm was, and her eyes have glossed over black. That one's pretty cool. There's another video where they show Max stabbing one of the Wendigos in the face over and over and over and over. And actually, I haven't even talked about the Wendigos yet. At one point, when they find Dr. Hill's office, they find some videotapes, and they pop them into a VCR. The first one they popped in turns out to be a porn, which, mildly funny. But then the second one that they pop in is a video of a guy who's being held in a cell against his will. He and another person are basically being held in a cell. And he's not being fed. If you know anything about the Wendigo mythology, Wendigos are created by extreme hunger. When someone is very, very hungry to the point of even potentially eating human flesh, they basically turn into, the Wendigo. And this is a Native American myth. So you can look up some information on that on your own. There have been lots of great Wendigo movies in the past, so check those out. But in this video of this guy that's being held in captivity, we see him getting, like, every time the video changes, we see him getting hungrier and hungrier. Eventually his cellmate dies, and we see the guy just on the ground. And, the other guy that's still alive is basically, please get me some food. I'm starving, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, the guy in the video succumbs to his hunger and starts eating his cellmate. Literally just starts ripping organs out from inside of it and just starts eating it. And as he's eating it, he's starting to grow like protrusions on his body, like all going up his spine. It looks almost like black spikes are coming out, like very thin, almost like porcupine spikes are coming out of certain spots up and down his spine. It's pretty gnarly. Abe actually displays the same injury later in the film while they're watching the sizzle reel. So let's go ahead and get to our finale. At one point, they realize that since the house that they're in probably sank into the ground, the door that they've been using to get in and out is probably not the official front door of the house. It's probably a door that was created after the house sank into the ground. And that's exactly what happened. They end up finding the true front door of the house, which of course is now underground. They open the door. They all decide to go through. They also, by the way, I forgot to mention that when they look through the guest book, no one has signed the guest book more than 13 times. So our group of friends basically realizes this is their last life. This is our last opportunity to get out of this situation. And like I said, eventually in the video, the guy that's being held captive eventually turns into a Wendigo after eating the flesh of his cellmate. And we hear the voiceover of Dr. Hill saying that every time the time loop resets, the people are so confused, disoriented, frustrated that it actually turns them into a Wendigo. And yeah, I forgot to mention too that everybody looks worse for wear every time they respawn. Like they'll actually still show the injuries of their last death. Like Megan gets her head smashed into the ground multiple times. When she respawns, her face has red marks on it. It's not bleeding or anything. It just has bruises on it, which is kind of interesting. The first time that Max dies, he gets stabbed in the eye by a wooden stake. When he's respawned after that, his eye hurts. You could see him kind of rubbing his eye. So it's like they hold residual effects of their last death, which, again, mildly clever. I'll give the movie credit for that. Anyway, so like I said, they open the true front door of the house, go through this tunnel, which leads through the old coal mine, and eventually leads to Dr. Hill's office, where Clover and the rest of the group end up getting separated by Wendigos. And there are many Wendigos in this movie. There's probably about a half dozen to a dozen Wendigos in this one. There's the one main one, which I think is the guy in the captivity video. I think he was probably the first Wendigo, and he's the one that I think we see the most often in the movie. He's like the main bald male Wendigo that we see. But then we also see Melanie as a Wendigo. And we can tell it's Melanie because she has the yellow dress that Melanie wore in that final video that she took. So Clover and her friends know that it's Melanie, who's now a Wendigo. Obviously, those people can't be saved. It's not like you can turn a Wendigo back into a normal human being. They're just kind of fucked. So eventually there's some back and forth. Clover and Melanie end up getting into an altercation. Clover ends up killing Melanie on a spike that's sticking out of the ground. She actually sacrifices herself, basically tackles the Melanie Wendigo into this spike that's coming out of the ground. It goes completely through the Wendigo, but it like partially pierces Clover's stomach. It's not enough to kill her, but it definitely slows her down a little bit. And then finally she gets to, after all these Wendigo attacks, like I said, our group gets separated. Eventually Melanie finds Dr. Hill's office, and Dr. Hill is there waiting for her. And, he's just basically talking to her about the situation and how impressed he is with her and how he thinks she'll be the one to survive, blah, blah, blah. But if you guys remember about the water in this world, in this scene, Dr. Hill's drinking a cup of coffee. He's drinking a mug of coffee, and he puts it down on his desk. Unfortunately, a few inches to the left of where his coffee cup is, there's water dripping from the ceiling. And obviously, we already know what the water in this world does. So basically, Clover is trying to find an opportunity to move the coffee cup over. So as Dr. Hill is monologuing, as every great villain does, he's monologuing, not paying attention to Clover. He's actually looking out the window of his office while he's giving his explanation. Clover moves the coffee cup over to the drip, allows 2 or 3 drips of the water into the coffee mug, and then puts the mug back in its original position. Dr. Hill, of course, doesn't notice, so he ends up taking a sip of the coffee. At that point, he basically tells her that someone has to die. There's no way that all 5 of you are going to escape. One person minimum has to die. And then that's when she says, yeah, but this time you're the one who dies. And just when she says that, Dr. Hill starts to convulse and explodes. He spontaneously combusts just like everybody else. Like I said, this is a stupid death because how does Dr. Hill not know what the water in this world does? And why would he be so stupid as to put his coffee cup down unattended in front of the girl that he's fucking mentally torturing and physically torturing right now? So yeah, Dr. Hill, he comes off as kind of this genius psychiatrist, but then he gets taken out in such a simple way, it makes him look like a dumbass. Oh, and by the way, the girl in the theater thought that Dr. Hill was Murray from Stranger Things. Admittedly, they do look similar, but it is not the same actor. This is Dr. Hill in this movie. I forget the name of Murray from Stranger Things, but yeah, not the same actor. So I just found it funny that the young girl behind me made that mistake. Anyway, after Dr. Hill explodes, Clover reunites with her friends. They are now all being chased by the Wendigos. A few of the Wendigos end up getting killed, stabbed, things like that, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then the masked killer is also chasing Abe, Megan, and Max, while Clover and Nina are basically just trying to escape, trying to get away from the Wendigos. So you've got 2 of the group being chased by Wendigos, and then 3 from the group being chased by the masked killer. Eventually, the 3 that are being chased by the masked killer get the upper hand. Since it's 3 against 1 now, they're able to just kind of, beat him up a little bit until they get him down flat on the ground. And eventually they take his sledgehammer and they smash his fucking head in, which is one of the better looking kills in the movie. Like the way that one of his eyeballs kind of sticks out of the mask after it's smashed by the sledgehammer is actually pretty impressive looking. So I'll give him credit for that. Obviously, the rest of the group, the other 2, are still being chased by Wendigos. We get the stupid parallel editing of the hourglass kind of, showing the last bits of sand. It's getting to the end. The Wendigos are getting closer to Clover and Nina. But eventually they are able to get out, and they end up emulating the cold open a little bit, where Clover tries to escape from the underground through the ground. Like she's actually digging her way up out to the surface, just like we saw her sister do in the cold open. The only difference is that when Clover gets out of the ground, the sand expires, the hourglass finishes, the sun starts to come up, the rain wall around the hotel stops, the sun comes out, and that's it. Our friends are all able to leave. We get one quick little scene, like an epitaph scene at the end, which is basically security footage of different angles of the house. And at one point we see like a winter scene. We see snow on the ground, but we see the house. We know what the house looks like by now. Snow is on the ground, and then we see an SUV pull up to the house, and we hear what sounds like Dr. Hill give a little bit of a chuckle. And that's the end of our film, folks. Fades to black and goes to credits from there. So like I said, yeah, this is definitely a tale of 2 halves. The first half is fun, it's interesting, it's gory, it's somewhat suspenseful. Somewhat is the best I can say. But then, yeah, like I said, once we get that sizzle reel, the rest of the movie is just a drag, other than that one scene with the Wendigo in the dark, right on top of a couple of the characters. Like I said, potentially my favorite part of the video game, and they translate it well in the movie. I actually wish that scene was a little bit longer in the movie, but, the movie's already an hour and 45 minutes long, so who the hell wants to sit in the theater for 2 hours watching this? So that's it, folks. That is Until Dawn 2025. I would say stick to the game. If you've never played the game and you've never seen the movie and you are a gamer, I would say play the game. Way more fun experience. Plus, you get to play it over and over again and get different scenarios, different endings, different trees. Like, it based on if you pass QuickTime events or fail QuickTime events, it could change the story drastically. So yeah, I would say play the game if you're interested. It's a last generation game. It's PlayStation 4. I believe there is a PlayStation 5 remake where they actually change some elements of the original game. I actually prefer the original game from PlayStation 4, but obviously, play whatever you can get your hands on. And that's it for me, folks. Don't watch the movie, play the game. That's going to be my final sentiment of the episode.
Yeah, if you have a choice between the two, go with the game for sure. Especially if you haven't seen the movie or played the game yet, I would rather like have you kind of spoiled, quote unquote, with like the game instead
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like watching the movie and getting too much spoiled from the game.
Exactly. So I would say, I mean, if you are a gamer who's played Until Dawn and you are still morbidly interested in the movie, I would say watch it up until that, compilation reel of all the different deaths and just stop the movie there. You don't need to watch the last 20 minutes.
All right. Well, this episode made it until dawn, so we are all safe and living on to do another episode. But before we get out of here, what else we got? Anything, Venom?
Nothing new. We were. Oh no, I'm sorry. We actually do have something new. Haha. No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 37 is in the can. It is recorded. I am in the process of editing it now. It is technically our April episode, and as we record this, there's only 2 days left in April. So I'm gonna try my hardest to get it out by April 30th so that I can at least say the April episode came out in April. So yeah, I would say look for that later this week. That is episode 37, where we look at an anime for the first time on Creature Comforts. We take a look at 1997's Princess Mononoke from Studio Ghibli and the absolute master of anime, Hayao Miyazaki. Who is my favorite anime director. So obviously this was a joy for me. So yeah, like I said, look out for that episode later this week. And that's honestly all I have. Nothing new on the Crystal Lake gift shop front. And unfortunately, the main show did get postponed again. So as soon as we can, as soon as we get no, I'm sorry. We don't even know what the movies are that we're doing on the next main show. That's what it is. So hopefully we get the next episode of the main show recorded sooner than later. Mike, I think, will have news about the last episode of the main show, so I'll leave that for him. And that's it for me, unfortunately. Like I said, the brunt of my guest appearances and other plans that I have are set for the summer. So the next month or two is going to be a little slow podcasting wise, but I'll do what I can.
All right. How about you, Don?
Yeah, not much. As Venom said, the latest episode of Creature Comforts is recorded. Hopefully that comes out soon enough to call it the April episode, but either way, we got that one done. I can say that I actually do have another guest spot coming up soon. Much like the previous couple of months where I talked about doing a roundtable discussion on werewolves, I'm going to be doing a similar one with the same group of people. We're going to be looking at, I believe they've titled it 1980s Creature Features. So this one will probably be a little bit more relatable to people. We're going to be talking like aliens and actually, let me just give me a second here. So aliens, the fly, cat people, critters, ghoulies, demons, American Werewolf in London, church, spookies, Rawhead Rex, to name a few. So it's probably going to be one of those very, very, very little prep work just based on the nature of those titles, but it should be a fun time. So based on how the werewolf one went, that one should hopefully be coming out soon. Again, I don't know the release schedule, so I don't know when the podcast version is going to be available, but hopefully that will come out soon. And hopefully this 1980s Creature Feature one will be out as well. So hopefully that will be sooner than later. But other than that, not much else.
All right. For myself, like Venom alluded to, yes, the latest episode of the main show, 66, it's up on YouTube. Our Dark Discussions Network leader is out of town for the next couple days, so it should get the post on there probably by Wednesday, which in case I'll make the official post for that. But for anyone that listens to YouTube, they can already hear it. And then my guest spot finally happened. It was with the Sin Bin crew, which is actually mostly the 22 Shots of Moods and Horror crew, plus one guy that isn't on the regular main show of theirs. And it's a monthly show where they get together and talk about Vinegar Syndrome's monthly releases. Basically, they all, or everyone on the show, including me as the guest, you pick something that was either released directly from Vinegar Syndrome or one of like their partner distribution companies, and you all review the movie you picked, and then they choose also like a main feature which everyone also gets. So it was kind of weird for me to be on a physical media show, because I am definitely not the level of collector as everyone else that's on that show. But it was kind of cool just to talk about the movies that I did end up buying. And you can catch that on YouTube under the 22 Shots account. I also posted a link to it in our group page on Facebook. So if that sounds interesting, check it out. And then, yeah, I'll be making the picks for our main show soon, probably by the end of today or tomorrow. That's all I really got. Is there anything releasing in the theaters this coming up week? Do you know?
I don't think so. I don't think we have anything for a couple of weeks in theaters.
Okay. Well, in that case, plenty of VOD has been releasing lately, so we got plenty to choose from. So we will figure that out. But with that said,
I'm very sorry. Yes, there is a movie opening this weekend. Rosario opens this Friday. Looks like a possession movie.
Ah, okay.
Colombian.
Ooh, fun.
All right, well, then that might be the pick. We'll see. But until then, let's thanks everyone for listening. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
If given the chance, I think I would have just joined the experiment. Something about killing good-looking white people just sounds appealing to me.
Peace.